All right, we are recording, and I'm gonna pull up my agenda. We need a motion to conduct this meeting electronically.
I can do it.
So, okay, go ahead.
I move that the items on the meeting agenda constitute essential business of this committee. Meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans concerning the COVID-19 outbreak, and any rule conflicting with the governor's executive order permitting electronic meetings be suspended.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
There we go. All right. Abigail, would you do our roll call vote? Please acknowledge that you're present, that you vote yes on the motion, and please state any conflict of interest.
Okay, Elena Boyer.
Present, yes to the motion, no conflicts.
April Calvin.
Present, yes, and I am a COC and ESG funded agency.
Laura Bermudez.
Present, no conflict.
And Paula Foster.
I'm present. I vote yes, and my wife works for an ESG funded organization.
Okay.
All right. So this is March 1st, and what's going on with the executive orders for electronic meetings and such? Do we know?
I don't know. At this point, I'm trying to keep my eyes out and then checking in with Derek, our attorney, so that we can make sure that we're.
When was it set to expire? On February 28th? Don't know.
Possibly. I haven't checked for today where we're at, but I am just trusting that Derek will let us know.
Yeah, I would assume so. Yeah.
He is aware of this meeting today and that it's virtually. He received the invitation, so.
Okay. Let's check with him to see where we're at. I'm not. Yeah, I haven't heard anything either, because I think it's just become so old school now, right? We've been doing it for so long, almost a year. Well then, let's just take a look at our agenda and see what we need to do here. All right. So, Laura, you are up first to talk about strategic planning and the committee chair follow-up. I am so sorry that I could not get on that meeting. So, Judy and Abigail, would you guys do me a big favor? Please see if there is a way to make sure that in all the places that I get notifications of meetings, that it all goes to the same email address. Sometimes I get it at my personal Yahoo account, and sometimes I get it at my OpenTable account. And that seems to be some of the problem with me getting on some meetings. I have to change the email address in the invitation because it's set up for the wrong, I don't know. Anyway, but if we can get them all going solely to the OpenTable email address and take everything else off, that would be great. I get multiple things in multiple places, and it's driving me a little bit insane. All right, Laura, all you.
Awesome. So there's just a couple things I wanted to cover today. Quick updates on 2 meetings that we had last week, and then I wanted to review with this group the items that we have identified on the strategic plan as being assigned to the executive committee, as we just haven't taken a look at those in a while. So I just want to get the whole group re-grounded on what's on there, make sure we know what it is that we've signed ourselves up to do, and define that better if wherever that's needed, and then prioritize that work so we can just get to work on it. So we'll start really quickly with a quick update. So last week we had 2 big meetings. The Resource Development Committee kicked off their committee on Wednesday. I thought it was a great meeting. Liz Allenfay is the committee chair, and she led the session. It was primarily focused on getting that group grounded in what is the COC, what's the governance of the COC, and then what is the strategic plan. So Judy did a really fantastic overview of that. And overall, I thought the group was really engaged, lots of really good questions, you know, just trying to understand better the COC and what they as a committee were tasked to do. So a lot of conversation about, so what exactly do we mean by identifying resources? Are we talking, you know, funding resources? Are we talking people resources? And kind of landed on, yeah, it's probably a little bit of everything, but starting with funding. And so I believe they have a plan to reconvene. I had to jump off before the meeting ended, but reconvene in the next month or so. So they're going to really quickly get ramped up and get started. Judy, is there anything else from that meeting that you would share with this group of note?
No, I think based on the quick response and the feel, people appreciate it. Just knowing what the other committees are, who they are. So that was one of the main things that also when we listen to what they want to get out of it, it's really who they are and where in the process they are in the strategic plan. So yeah.
From the Resource Development Committee kickoff on Wednesday, because you didn't have enough meetings last week. Is there anything from the Resource Development Committee that you think that this group?
That meeting was, Resource Development. I'm like, yeah, 8 o'clock doesn't work on a Monday for me. Resource Development Committee is really, they're ready to go. They're really, I mean, they're just waiting to really understand big picture on what they need to do. And they have a timeline set for September to come with a recommendation to the Homelessness Planning Council, and to really look at where opportunities are, what they have found, where the landscape, the fiscal landscape, what it looks like around homelessness. So it's a small but mighty group. That's what it feels like, yeah.
Yeah. And another thing that they talked about that I thought was really good that they're already thinking about this was how do they, you know, inform the community, the COC of what they're doing, make sure that they are letting people know, you know, why is it that they're going through this exercise of identifying resources and pulling all of this together. So I would assume that in the next, you know, few months that they'll want to come and speak to the executive committee and to the planning council just to give the overall body a heads up of, you know, hey, this is why we're, you know, embarking on this body of work. This is what you can expect from us. Because they're probably going to be reaching out to many members of the community to ask for, you know, information on funding and resources and all that stuff so that we can start better understanding the landscape that exists in Nashville. So I'm sure more to come. Any questions on Resource Development Committee?
This is Susie. I don't have a question about that committee, but I thought that the meeting on, was it Friday? Good God.
It's Friday.
The chairs, they all seemed so appreciative of getting together and hearing from one another. And I don't know whether something like that could happen quarterly, but if they're going to kind of tag team or begin to kind of figure out how their work kind of integrates, again, who am I to suggest one more meeting? But they were all very appreciative. Again, they're working so hard. We're so lucky to have the people that we have sharing these committees. They really are working committees. And in any way that we can support their kind of integration, I just wanted to encourage that.
I agree, and that's a great transition, Susie. I want to ask, for those of you who attended the meeting on Friday, if you had any reflections on the meeting, anything that you would want to know.
So Friday seems like so long ago, right? But I second and third the thoughts of, everyone being happy to, even just seeing face and, hearing the names of the other chairs and what's working in their committees. I think that, it's a lot of hard work. So, just letting them know, my role, I don't chair a committee, but I just wanted to let them know that they were appreciated, because we can have all the meetings in the world and we can, have all of this stuff going on, but the real work lies within the committees. And that's just what I wanted to put my 2 cents in for. So hopefully they receive that well.
And this is Elena. I mean, I think for someone that chairs a committee, it is a lot of work, just kind of, with the extra meetings and everything like that. And I think it felt appreciated that, we got to share where we are and how we're meeting our goals and those types of things. So it was a really nice space to do that. I really enjoyed the conversations about kind of the polling that you did. Are we patient-centered? Are we racially equitable? Are we, and just the conversation I think that came from that. I think we have some work to do, but I think we're all, engaged and ready to do that work. So it was nice to have those conversations started and talk as a larger group too. So it was great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and the values conversation was really powerful. I'm glad that it worked out the way that it did. But Judy, did you have any reflections? I'm usually the first one to jump in with my opinion, so I'm trying to let everybody go first.
Since I already shared them.
Yeah. Yeah, so I agree with everyone, and thank you guys so much for taking the time to jump on. And Paul, I'm so sad we missed you. There's nothing more frustrating than technical issues, especially when you've made the time
to, it's just where we're at. It hopefully, things are going to start changing in the not too distant future. So
the great news is that we didn't get through all our content, so we're going to have another meeting that you can join. But yeah, I thought it was the passion and the engagement were really high. In fact, part of the reason we didn't get through all our content was because our introductions, well, there were a lot more people than I anticipated on the call, first of all. And there's just so much more conversation in the introductions and in the values polling conversation. And I think it was really important conversation, so I didn't cut it off. And so we did run a little long, but I think we stopped at a really good stopping point. So what we covered was, getting to know each other. And then we talked about 2020 accomplishments and then the current state of the strategic plan. And our next meeting, we've got about an hour and change of content left, probably, 45 minutes to an hour plus a little discussion time of content left. And that's really focused on 2021. So I thought it was a nice break in the content. But overall, it does sound like the committee chairs are wanting more connection with each other, that they really value this opportunity to hear what the other committees are doing. And when I looked through, what people's expectations were for the session, it really was about getting a better understanding of the work that's going on across all the different committees, learning more about how they can collaborate and work together. So I think we're going to get to that in the next body of work when we start talking about, so what are we going to do in 2021? How does the work of each committee contribute to that ultimate vision? And then what does each committee chair need from each other, from the planning council, from the overall community, and then what can they give, right? What can they share with each other, contribute? So really looking forward to that. Judy and I are working to find a time probably in the either late last week of March or first week of April, because we've got spring break coming up and all kinds of fun stuff going on. But I have a couple pages of notes that I'm working to pull together. I'm going to send that out to the committee chairs and this group, so you guys will get the slides, the screenshots from the values conversation, so you can see where everybody voted as far as how we're doing for each of our values. And if I've got all the chat, there was tons and tons of content in the chat, so I'll send that out as well, so you guys will have that for your records and for your reference. But looking forward to continuing that conversation. And Susie, it's really funny, I kind of laughed when you said, you know, what about a quarterly meeting? Judy and I have talked about, you know, we said initially twice a year, and then we said, oh, maybe quarterly, and then we're like, no, quarterly is way too much, maybe twice a year. And then on Friday after our meeting, we're like, oh shucks, I guess twice a year might be too little. So we're kind of playing with maybe 3 times a year. I don't know if I want to sign up for quarterly. That's a lot of work, but and it's a lot for the chairs, but I do think that they want to get together more often than every 6 months. But, so yeah, that's a quick overview on those 2 big meetings. Does anybody have any questions or anything outstanding that we haven't covered around engaging the committee chairs or the resource development committee that just kicked off? Cool. Well then, let's go to the strategic plan items. I've got them, let me pull them up. Brandon, can you make me the host, or can I steal a ball from you? I don't know if I can do that. Oh, I can't. No, cannot.
Hey, I'm gonna go jump get my coffee. You guys go ahead. I'll be right back.
Brandon, I don't know if you heard me. Can I get the ball? Or Abigail, do you know? Because he's the host and he has the ball. There we go. Real quick. Playing with 2 screens. It's not like difficult. So while Paula's grabbing her coffee, for anybody who can see my screen, these are the items assigned to the executive committee on the strategic plan. And what I want to do is, and the ones highlighted in yellow are the ones that we've kind of identified, at least at first glance, that should be on the to-do list for this year. That may be doable, it may not be doable, but that's part of the conversation I wanted to have for today. Welcome back, Paula. Okay, so what we've got here on the screen are all the items that are assigned to the executive committee on our strategic plan, and they are loosely ordered in chronological or assumed chronological completion order. This was just a stab that Judy and I took in planning for the committee chair meeting to just identify more or less realistic completion or timelines that this work can be done. So what I wanted to do today was just to go through these different items so that we can all be grounded on what they are, where their status is, and then have a discussion about, okay, so what is a priority for us as an executive committee to focus on, to start working on? What are things that perhaps we can push down the line a little bit, so on and so forth. So, Judy, would you mind just going through the list really quickly and sharing some details, especially the items? We've got a couple that are technically in progress. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of sharing what's the line item and then where we are at as far as progress.
Yes, can you actually, do you mind going back to the timeline with the phases real quickly? Just, I think it's a good catch up to do that. Yes, yes. So basically, when we talked to both the resource committee, when we talked about the strategic plan, and then also reminded the chairs, what we're doing is really the purpose of the whole strategic plan is to build that foundation. So when Laura and I prepared, we figured rather than let's not be bogged down by the timeline, by the dates and deadlines, because we all know in a first strategic plan, you're gonna never get the timing right, because that's just not, you have to take a shot at it and then try. But what it is, the way it's really established is in phases, when you think about it that way. So in phase 1 is really establish a system of resource, know what we have. That's phase 1, bottom line. Phase 2 is then, once we have identified the gaps, let's talk about how to expand the inventory, fill the gaps, establish metrics. For phase 1, you have the tools to collect the metrics. In phase 2, you can actually establish some more concrete goals, and then increase the overall collaboration. And then phase 3 is accelerate and sustain growth. So it's kind of go forth and do. But phase 3 is also the phase where we need to think about what's next, an updated strategic plan, and have, based on phase 1 and phase 2, set more concrete goals. And then when we look at the 3 goals, they all fit in here, and the communications goal fits in all of those. Develop commitment through engagement, that's the communication of all of that. So I just wanted to give that context. And I think based on that context, it will make it easier, and that's how we explained it to the chairs as well, to really prioritize and look at where they are based on these phases, and not get bogged down, oh, we haven't met this deadline or that deadline, or we need to. It's really to understand what each goal, and discuss these goals as based on build that foundation, fill the gaps, and then let's set concrete goals that are measurable. Okay, I'm good with that. Anybody has any questions on that?
Thank you, Judy. That was really good branding.
So when we look at the executive committee has about 10 goals, and I think it's really, that's a whole lot when you want to, to just go and tackle all at once. The way this page is actually set up is more on the timeline on those phases. So when we look at ensure that low-income housing stock includes units with no to low barriers set aside to serve people experiencing literal homelessness, fill those units through the coordinated entry process. One of the things we also have to look at when we think of these goals, they are formulated in what needs to happen. You as the executive committee, or any committee, has to really understand, what does that mean for us? Is this work done somewhere? Do we just need to know where that work is done? We need to understand where it's done, if it's not done, where does it need to be done? That's kind of the goal and mindset to have. You're not, that's kind of to look at that. I don't know if I should go through all of the goals right now, or do you want to discuss each? I mean, how do we want to approach that? I need a little help here to think that through.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I'll open it up to the group. Would it be helpful for us to go through these kind of very quickly, all at once first, or should we just go ahead and go line by line and discuss them?
I don't really have a preference. We can do it however you guys think is best. I don't care.
I think for prioritizing, if that's the goal for today, to really what stands out and what do you need to work on, let's go through all of them at once and then go that way. So the next one listed here is establish a strategic plan review and revision process with quarterly review of objectives and an annual revision of the strategic plan. I think that's pretty straightforward, just to really understand that the role is oversight of how is the strategic plan moving forward.
Yeah, and I think for the ones in progress, let's go ahead and call out where we are from a progress perspective. I'll speak to this one. You know, last year we put together a committee report. We started asking those committee chairs to submit those reports, and we were going to start, if anybody remembers what happened this time last year. I really had to dig down deep to remember this. But we were going to start kind of a quarterly review process with the Homelessness Planning Council to look through just the overall health of the strategic plan, identify any risks, issues, mitigate, and figure out, you know, if there was anything, what we needed to do to remove barriers and accelerate the work of the plan. So we had talked about doing that. We had kicked off with the committee chairs, and then we had COVID. So that was more or less put on pause. So I think that there's some work here just to brush off the original plan and structure that we had proposed and we're working to put into place, and agree as a group, you know, when is it that we want to have that quarterly review of the strategic plan with the council. You know, when does it make sense, given, you know, we're kicking off with committee chairs right now, we're getting back into the swing of things, et cetera, et cetera. So we don't have to talk about that right now, but that's kind of where the status, my interpretation of the status is with that work.
One quick question. Do you think that it would be beneficial when the committee chairs are reconvening, whether it's quarterly, semi-annual, or, you know, in tripods, whatever that's called? Do you think that would be a great do you think that would be a great time to revisit it?
You know, April, I think that's a really good call out. It is probably a really good time to review the strategic plan, especially since the committee chairs are the ones doing a bulk of the work on the strategic plan. So yes, I agree. And then what we'd want to do is maybe bake in, you know, how does that meeting work? And then how does that meeting flow into the conversation with the planning council? And where I think we as a group can, you know, discuss and determine the right level and approach is to what level does the planning council need to have conversation about the strategic plan? And what exactly is the value of the planning council's involvement in the strategic plan, and really focus our conversation on that.
And then the next one, I'm just going to move on here. The create quarterly data reports of strategic plan progress and initiatives. It's very related to the one above. So that's also where we're saying we're in progress. We have looked in, I know in June, I kind of looked at and asked committees where we are, but we have not done a quarterly, actually, a report that we finished and put out in front of the Homelessness Planning Council. Start implementing the low-income housing strategies outlined in 11E, quarterly updates to the Homelessness Planning Council and the COC general membership. And just to remind you, the goal objective 11E is develop a low-income housing strategy based on the inventory and partner list. So one of those, this is not started yet. One of the reasons is also because the other goals have not been completed. Present and or deliver semi-annual reports to the COC Homelessness Planning Council and other community partners, including Metro Council. We have not done that. Develop a comprehensive communication engagement strategy that supports the actions identified within the strategic plan. The ideas below may or may not be included. Implement communication strategies for potential funders, citizens, and policymakers. Use the point-in-time count as an engagement tool to educate the community. Provide regular learning sessions by partnering with the Nashville Coalition for the Homeless. Develop lecture series on the best practices to prevent and end homelessness. So these are things, as you know, that some of these are happening, have been happening, were put on hold during COVID, but they have not been done in a really comprehensive or with all of those kind of a plan. So that's I think is something that frankly the executive committee could lead and help outline, and then go to the partners on how that could look like. Produce a quarterly information campaign. What did we say? Yeah, it's not that is also linked to the one above, I think, that can be taken care of. Then the next point or the next task, take advantage of successes to announce and comment good news, initiatives launched and goals achieved. One of the thing on all this communications piece, we have been able to do a monthly newsletter where some of it is in there, but it's not, again, we have not, as a executive committee or homelessness planning council, endorsed a kind of communication schedule, if you want something high level. The next point, 3.1, review existing and newly proposed committees to align with the strategic plan. Examples, Consumer Advisory Committee and Resource Development Committee. So then we list the examples, establish a Consumer Advisory Committee with a clearly identified role, and do the same with the Resources Development Committee. So as you know, both of these committees specifically have been put in place, but we have not reviewed existing and newly proposed committees. We have not really looked at how all the committees are working together. This is something right now that actually the Charter Committee has taken a stab at and is discussing, but that could be an opportunity, I think, for whatever comes up there for the Executive Committee to weigh in, pick up before it goes to the Homelessness Planning Council and participate in that discussion. Develop a low-income housing strategy based on the inventory and partner list. Again, this will depend on having inventory and partner lists. We do have a really extensive partner list, actually, and then the Resource Development Committee is about to review that list and talk about what inventories, how that looks like, and what those will look like. The Data Committee is looking at inventories. The Resource Development Committee is discussing what that could look like. And I think, Laura, you probably need to scroll a little.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it, yes.
That's all we wrote. Yeah. So I think, Judy, why I liked grounding in that phase 1, 2, and 3 is because this becomes a little more clear to me. You know, from an executive committee perspective, when we look at the tasks in those phases of the plan, you know, a lot of our tasks fall under kind of these bullets around defining governance, you know, increasing collaboration, and this piece around commitment through engagement. And so, you know, with that in mind and that idea of really layering on, I wanted to open it up to this group just to get your thoughts on, you know, what jumps out at you as something that is imperative that we start working on now, or you'll get completed, or what have you? Let's just start with that question first. Is there something here that you say, wow, let's really focus on this, or this body of work, we really should start efforts here, or let's tie up some loose ends on these line items, etc.
Hi there. I think that some of the quarterly things, like, for example, we didn't have a pet count this year. Some of the things that centered around that, I don't know if it would be beneficial for us to, kind of build off some of the work that was done last year versus this year, and combining some of the data points. For example, the data committee and the HMIS committee, and there's a lot of the HUD TA reports that are coming in. Maybe an easy way for us to gather some of the data at this point in time, especially while we have some help. And there's a more robust push in the HMIS committee.
So, April, are you looking at that quarterly data report piece?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, my sense is it would be great for us to be able to kind of tie up some loose ends on that, quarterly and kind of regular review and reporting process, so that we can get that up and running. And because that, at the end of the day, I think is going to drive a lot of the other items on the list. I'd love to start addressing this concept of, communication campaign and, sharing information, what have you. But I think that if we set a goal to tackle that, in the summertime, we'll be in good shape, because we can focus on like just getting some of this foundational stuff figured out and running.
And one of the things, and I'm glad the way, April, you nailed it kind of. So when I was reading these items and looking through them, I was also taking notes on kind of big themes, the buckets. It's going back to that phase approach. So one is reports and reviews. And I think for the executive committee, when you look at, it's not you doing necessarily the reports, but you looking at what reports are needed and where would they be done, and then work with that entity to see what's doable. Because you also need to understand that, a lot of this information is already somehow out there, but not linked. So you're the ones linking it together and then, presenting it that way. So when I looked at all these 10 items, so one was reports and reviews / communication of progress. That's going with it. And then committee reviews was another big one, just to understand. That goes back with the progress, and is it really where we need to be and what we need at this point as a homelessness planning council. Also remember, when the unification of the two boards started, a lot of these committees were just taken on and taken over, and we never really paused and looked at which ones are really absolutely needed or how it needs to be structured. And that's kind of part of the big theme here, and that's a heavy lift, and I think that's a heavy lift assigned to the executive committee.
This is Elaine. I'm wondering if are we kind of taking advantage of what's already existing? So we as many committees as we can, we do our monthly reports on our updates, like just using that. I'm not really sure how we actually use what we submit. The committees, when we have to do our updates, yeah, I guess that's what I'm thinking about, is just kind of like, how do we use what we already have and just compiling it? I mean, I'm thinking about the monthly reports that come from Judy and her team, even the data quality work that's been going on. So just, to me, it's almost compiling of what do we have and then reporting out on that. So I think it's already existing a little bit. Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying? Okay. I see nods.
Yeah, I think, Elena, a lot already exists. And for example, those monthly committee chair report, status reports were part of what we had just kicked off, right, before COVID. And so it's a matter of brushing those off and probably just putting a process into place within our committee to be looking at those reports and having a meaningful discussion, so that, to your point, they don't just sit on a shelf, right, and collect dust, because they have really good information that we can and should be using.
Right.
Hey, Judy, I should know this, and Abigail, in terms of the committees and their monthly reports that are requested, are they all coming in? And then as staff, I think if they're not, then I guess I and others can take on sort of the nudging of those committee chairs to get those together. But like then broadcasting that just using the reports would be, I don't know, that wouldn't be terribly effective. So maybe there could be some bullets that then get added to your monthly report or something like that. But I suspect that the chairs are probably not submitting their monthly reports on time or at all. And I would be glad to kind of be, as staff to some of those, more responsible in making sure that those get submitted, and then figure out how we kind of communicate that across the chairs and back to exec.
Yes, that would be helpful. And I think we just looked at a new schedule on kind of a deadline that is set. So about, I would say, hardly anybody meets the deadlines that I have been sending out. But if you have a set deadline, like I can't remember right now, but I think the third Tuesday of, or whatever it is, and have a reminder email, that should help. And then about half of the committees have actually reported with some nudging, others haven't. So yeah.
And one of the things we're going to share in the next committee meeting is, even if you don't have anything to report, just submitting your status saying, we didn't have any meaningful meetings or progress to report this month. Because what we don't know is, are people not reporting, not submitting status because they don't have anything material to report, or is it because they forgot? So, and especially for some of these committees, that's okay if they don't have anything material to report, it's just letting us know. And then, Judy, maybe what we could do for next time with this group, and I apologize, I am totally the reason we moved this meeting to 8 a.m. I have training that starts at 9, and I'm going to have to drop off here in a couple minutes. But Judy, maybe what we could do for the group, for this group next time, is just take ourselves through the committee, the status reports next month, and really take a pass at looking through that content, having discussion about, what's the work going on, what needs to be on the council agenda, what do we as an executive committee maybe, where is it that we might have barriers that we need to remove or questions that we need to ask. We can certainly do that. We get those reports before our executive committee, and Judy, correct me if I'm wrong, we had actually created an executive summary of those reports. I know we were sending those out as well, so that you don't have to look through every single report. The key items and the key status is in that first executive summary. So perhaps next month we can take a stab at looking at those reports. And then, the idea of this whole governance, strategic plan reporting process, status, etc. It's supposed to be iterative. It's certainly not something that we say, well, this is the report format and this is the structure and it has to be this way. If we think it needs to improve to better fit our goals, then let's definitely do that.
So, Laura, I'm sorry, let me ask a question. I know you got to get off in a minute. I want you to hear this. I look at this and I have a really hard time operationalizing this sometimes. What exactly are we supposed to be doing? And I see what it says, but the questions I have is, how am I supposed to do that? And a lot of it seems to it feels like it falls on Judy and Abigail to do what these things say the executive committee is doing, because there are staff support, and I'm not sure if that's the way it should be or not. I wonder if it would be possible for us to do a special executive committee meeting that's not part of our regular whatever else we need to do, to focus specifically on talking about what exactly are we doing and who's going to do it and how are we going to make it happen. Because I look at some of this going, I don't know how to make that happen. So maybe setting aside an hour and a half that's not connected to anything else that we have to do, specifically to decide what do each of us need to do, what parts do we need to play, and how do we accomplish what's written on this piece of paper in a time that we don't have to all rush off to go do something else. And I don't mean that to sound like you are shirking your responsibility, Laura, because I have lots of times I have to jump off fast too, because we don't have enough time. So that's what I'm saying. Should we set aside a specific, strategic plan executive committee meeting specifically to decide what exactly do we do next? Just a thought.
I think that's a great idea. I think it's needed.
And I think if we can check in with the committee chairs about their, they are looking at these strategic steps and they feel very responsible for doing them, or, postponing dates and all that kind of stuff. If we can get with the committee chairs and not only get what they feel like they can do, but cross off a few things on the list, or just sort of say, this is just going to have to kind of go on the back burner for a while we concentrate on these things, because there are so many steps. I feel overwhelmed when I look at it.
That's exactly what I'm feeling, Susie.
Yeah. No, if it would help us that's why I said like data first, anything that for any of, maybe we need to lead them a little bit along the way. Anything that has to do with data, how do we gather all of that? Whether it's, the data of our numbers, or the data of the amount of units that are available, or the data on the resources that are available. Like if we lead them to focus on the same topic, I guess, then maybe we will all be more productive in the end. And the second part would be, how do we increase those things? Not saying that all of the outcomes and measurements go in that alignment, but they all have something to do with building on top of the other. So maybe that would be helpful, because for me, it could be easy to say, let's just tackle the easy parts first because we can knock those off. But then we could tackle them wrongly if we don't know what the data is, because then we won't know how to, lead the group. So
that's a really good point, April. So I'm going to ask if Judy and Abigail, if you will help us find a time where we can do, I don't know, an hour and a half meeting that all of us could jump on at some point in the next couple of weeks. I know we'll have to give it a sunshine, whatever, to make sure that people know that we're going to do it. But I'd really love to be able to just focus on this and not have to worry about moving on to another topic, and see what we can do and see what we can come up with in terms of how to actually accomplish the things that are written on this piece of paper.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add a few things. I mean, this conversation is exactly what your committees are talking about. As a data committee chair, we look at these and we're overwhelmed. We don't know how to do it. And the data committee has a lot of responsibility here, but we've submitted our reports where, we did a gaps analysis. We're doing these things, and, it is challenging and overwhelming. So I just wanted to make that note that it's just, your committees are actually looking at this too, having challenges, but still making headway, doing a gaps analysis, pulling data together, getting our numbers together. So I just wanted to share that, because I think it's important that these are hard goals to meet when we have a lot of other work to do.
Right. And I tell you, this year has not helped. So
Okay, I need to jump in real quickly. And something, Elena, you said, when we already have other work to do. That is a key sentence to be like, okay, if the Homelessness Planning Council has a strategic plan, the other work, I mean, it's a roadmap and prioritizing. So when there's other work to do, there needs to be a process to fit that in or park it somewhere, or how does it fit into the strategic plan? Because committees need to be aligned with the work based on the task assigned from the Homelessness Planning Council. So those are the things that I think you need to structure. And I love the idea of a special meeting to just dig a little deeper on what that is. And I think the executive committee is the key to making sense of all of that and give some directive and guidance.
Yeah, that would be great. And one of the things that has helped our committee is that our agendas are actually divided by our objectives and the strategic priorities. So all we do is focus on our work. So that has been helpful in us kind of meeting those goals too.
Actually, that's a great idea, Elena. Maybe we should, and again, let's do this special meeting, and maybe what we can do is also put agenda items on our meeting that address strategic plan items. I don't think that we've been actually doing that, and that's I think would be incredibly helpful. So, Laura, thank you. I know this has been your baby, and I respect so much the work that you have put into this, and I appreciate it. So I don't want us not to accomplish things because we feel overwhelmed by it. I want to make sure that we are doing what we can do and making things move forward. And I think that is respectful of the work that Laura and the Strategic Planning Committee put into this. And I want to make sure that happens. So thank you.
Yeah,
before you have to jump off.
This is really, our baby, right? This is meant to be the plan of the community, and so I certainly want to make sure that that we're doing whatever we can to make sure that everybody feels a sense of ownership and understanding of what is this plan, how does it help us, and how does it ultimately help us achieve our goals. And I mean, I totally get it. There's a lot on here, and it feels overwhelming at first glance. And I think the key is taking little pieces, step by step, and it will be less overwhelming. I think Judy does a really good job of kind of articulating, right? Like, let's look at this in phases and not at all the stuff that we have to do, and we'll accomplish little by little. I think our group, as the executive committee, the value that we bring, and really what all these line items are about, is providing direction to the to the COC and to the other committees as to where they should be prioritizing, how everything fits together, and how that turns into meaningful progress for our community. So I mean, I think if we have that mindset around these line items, all of a sudden this stuff will feel a lot less overwhelming, because these are just ways that we can accomplish that goal. And if for whatever reason we look at a line item here and we say, oh, this is not helping us accomplish that goal, or what have you, then that's a discussion we can also have, right? Let's change it, let's remove it, let's make it so that it's outcome focused. So, well, cool. Thank you guys so much for the conversation today, and we will, I'm looking forward to having some dedicated time to talk about this. And if there's anything that you all need from me, or anything that comes out of this meeting that needs my attention, just let me know. And I apologize having to jump off and make you guys all get up early on a Monday. I appreciate your flexibility.
Thank you, Laura, so much.
No problem. Have a great week. Bye, everyone.
All right. Sweet. So let's see. Heather's not here today to give us an update, is she?
No, she texted early this morning and let us know that she wasn't going to be able to make it, but she'll plan on presenting at the Planning Council some dashboards, and said if there's anything specific we want her to address or discuss, to just let her know. So I don't know if you guys have anything that you feel like outside of what she normally reports that you'd like to hear more about. But if so, happy to pass that along.
You know, I might be interested to hear. We know that there has been some complaints and some issues with the hotel program. Um, so I wonder if there's anything that she could, bring us in terms of information about what's happening at the actual programming of that. And I don't know if there's anything that we would be interested in knowing around how it's operating or not.
I was curious too if there was a follow-up to whatever the conflict was last month, but I wasn't sure if that was at this team meeting or a larger one.
Right, and that's a really good question. After that, I don't know that there has been anything from that particular council member who was raising a ruckus about it. Judy, do you know anything?
No, that she has been very quiet after. I think she may have understood the delicacy of the privacy. And I also looked, we don't have any attendees right now, and I feel comfortable sharing some of the things here. But I'm not sure if I want to bring it up to the whole Homelessness Planning Council and start another whole conversation about, we don't want to focus on one location and then have other people target that location again. So I haven't heard anything back.
Makes sense.
We have every 2 weeks, the service providers have meetings, virtual meetings also with the property owners. There are, I think, a text chain with the property owner and the service providers to address immediately when if there are issues coming up. Dion and I have weekly calls with the precinct, so we stay on top of the calls that are coming in or not, when there's something that we can then communicate back to the service providers, so they're in the loop. Things have calmed down a little, and so there is a lot of focus, and the service providers are just present out there and working it. So, but from a political sense, it's really calmed down. I really would encourage not to bring that back up.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. All right then, on to our agenda. You guys got a copy of that. It is pretty status quo in terms of items. Do you have anyone that is going to present a story of progress?
I do have another one from the contributor. Unless somebody has an idea of who else, and we have, I do have
Hey,
stories.
Judy,
Yeah.
do you think that it would be beneficial? Things seem to be going really, really well with Miss Denise and reconnecting with family. Now, of course, the story's not over, right? we don't know how it ends, and we don't know, the full scope. But do you think that would be?
I love that idea because that is one that touches so many people.
Yeah. I mean, from mental health co-op to the, police department that was just a full collaboration. So,
What is going on with her right now?
So for good, bad, or worse, Tiffany is a private detective, right? So once I can't say that part, right? She snooped all into her business, stalked her on Facebook. I can't say any of that, but I want you all to know it was about probably 2 full days that went into researching her family. She has a sister that lives in a $540,000 home in Florida. She has her mom is still alive. She has a little money in the bank because the dad passed away while she was missing. And they just, she, I think, was working on getting, she had obtained her master's at a university and was working at the university, and they started to notice mental health issues. And when they questioned her about it, she packed up, sold everything, and ran. She went to Atlanta and, was staying there with friends or aunt, I believe, staying there with an aunt. And then it didn't work out. She ended up at the mission in Atlanta. And then they lost her. I had no idea she was here in Tennessee for almost 20 years total is the last time that they saw her. So when Tiffany, she sent a certified letter to the house of the sister, and they called, and the tears are flowing, and you just can't even imagine the love that's there. And they wanted to get on a plane, come here immediately to get her, but of course she is right where she needs to be to get the treatment that she needs for now. And at some point,
where is she right now?
oh, she's at Tennessee Mental Health.
She's at mental. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, and then hopefully the discharge plan for her from there, which family's going to be involved in, and she won't be back
Definitely.
at stop.
They are working on
amazing.
getting a lawyer, because they'll have to, basically take her to court to say she's incompetent on making these decisions on her own. And because otherwise they can come get her, she can jump out of the car and there'll be nothing they can do. So they're working on getting a lawyer to help with that process. So, Tiffany and the Quality of Life team took documents out to Middle Tennessee Mental Health, like the mom faxed over a birth certificate and, contact information just to show proof that they are her family. Her birthday was February 24th. February 24th was her birthday, and that was the day after we got in touch with her mom. So can you imagine? Like, I'm almost in tears, so I don't want to be the one to share a story. Maybe somebody else will, because I'll be all crying and stuff. So, but it's just an amazing story, when you think about, cases that you may have studied while in school, right? When you think about things that, we don't really think or know that happens in the real world. And it's right here. Her sister took out some great pictures on Facebook, and she sent some pictures of when they were younger.
Wow. That's amazing.
She really wanted pictures. The mom and the sister really wanted pictures of what she looked like here on the bench. And, I advised Tiffany not to send them, but in Tiffany's communication with them, she sent some anyways. And it just absolutely broke their heart.
Well, wow, that's amazing. And I'm so glad to hear it. I'll share that with my team this morning when we meet. We were all ready to, go form a circle around her so that they wouldn't arrest her off the bench before she went to the crisis unit. So, that's an amazing story, and it's
an amazing story.
So good to hear. So yes, I would love for that to be our story at our meeting. Thank you.
And I think it's good to get a variety of agencies to report these success stories and these. I'd love to hear from the mission. I'd love to hear from an array of agencies. And if we start seeing the contributor being, the source of several of the stories, it just looks kind of myopic,
Yeah. And that's the other thing, Susie, I think is that my organization is not necessarily, we didn't receive any of the funding. We haven't necessarily directly put folks into any of the programs at this point, yet we are still involved in a lot of the same people's lives. And I would actually love to be able to go beyond just the funded agencies. Would that be appropriate? I mean,
Absolutely.
You're really talking about continuum of care. You're talking about everyone who's involved, not just the funded agencies. And that's
exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
Good.
And Judy,
I was hesitant to offer a story until I said that. So, all right. But this I think touches so many of us.
And Judy, if you could just gather a list of all the agencies, because what I'm thinking about is, I should not, right? But what I'm thinking about is the amount of dollars that went into this. When you talk about a continuum of care. So if you could gather a list of agencies that know Denise or work with Denise, definitely that could be something that we can highlight. For 10 years, these are the agencies that provided services to her. And, not to say our mental health system is broken, but something's broken, right?
I need some help, because these stories, I can do it. I don't have the time to do it. So who can take it on and submit them? I don't mind with that, but it's just another thing. I'm just tapped out this month.
I know. Well, we'll work on this one, and then we can regroup about how to do this on an ongoing basis, I think. But thank you. And April, thank you for all of that information. And my team will be very excited to hear that when I tell them in about 20 minutes.
One more thing, Judy, that could help is maybe just assigning an agency per month, like in advance. And just assign an agency a month,
that's what
the contributor and just go through all of the agencies here in Nashville, and then I'm sure they'll be more than happy to present a story.
And that's what we've done. That's why we went to you did the first, and contributor. I mean, that's what and they just submit some stories. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. That's awesome. Anything else on the agenda that anyone wants to talk about? It's pretty.
Yes, I need some help. So we went to the point in time count committee, the data committee, and the HMIS oversight committee, and they all adopted a recommendation to the Homelessness Planning Council to strongly encourage all outreach groups to participate in data collection through HMIS to ensure that Nashville has a solid assessment of the outdoor homelessness situation in Nashville. And there's a specific the recommendation is for the Homelessness Planning Council to make this ask to organizations with professional street outreach services to enter data into HMIS coordinated entry and work with MHED to do so, with the goal to be able to pull the first monthly street outreach report through HMIS by the end of April. And then what the report would show aggregated unduplicated numbers of people living outdoors, gender, race, age, length of homelessness, veteran status, income/benefits, disability, etc. So this is an attempt to do ongoing data collection, and all three committees endorsed this ask. Now my question is, where on the agenda should that be? I could do it, if nothing else, under my report, but it's really under committee reports because it comes from three committees if there's an ask, and we sent the wording out. We will send that out beforehand so everybody knows what kind of the ask is, but I just wonder where on the committee, as on the agenda, you would like that.
I think it should go under committee reports.
Mm-hmm.
Judy, will there be a specific committee that will report that?
I don't know. We have not. It's from all three. I don't know.
Okay.
It seems like what generated it was the point in time count not happening. Now, of course, and so if Jaha was willing to take that on, I think that makes sense.
I would agree that, but if she can't do it, then maybe we would come to the data committee, because the data we're talking about putting data into the system. Would that be whose data? Is that you, Elena?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's just a whole lot more outreach folks that participate and attend the point in time meeting, and it just sort of seems like that would signify a bit more buy-in by that very community that's being asked to do the work.
Yeah. Does that sound right? So we'll ask Jaha, and then if she can't do it, then we'll punt to Elena. Will that work?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the agenda? If not, let's move on to other business. Do we have any other business today?
This is kind of related to what we already talked about, but and like the strategic plan and all that kind of stuff. But this gaps analysis that HUD kind of has us kind of do once a year, which didn't happen once a year for a while. But Katie Kitchen, who's working with Corporation for Supportive Housing, CSH, out of Ohio, has been giving her time trying to get at the gaps out there. It's pretty depressing because the number of units of housing that are needed to house all these people is like in the thousands, but it's also using the data that we have either from HMIS for the mission, a variety of other things. And she's updated that. She's gone through it with the data committee. I would think it probably needs one more stint with the data committee to kind of get their blessing or their nod or whatever. But I think that those numbers, she tries to annualize some numbers, and I think it's about time we kind of at least, threw a few of those numbers around. And they are fairly well thought out with the data that we can find these days. I think exec ought to hear from her and see the presentation of her spreadsheet to get an idea of sort of where those numbers are coming from. And I think it would also be an interesting presentation to either the Planning Council or the COC general body as well.
I do have one thought on that, which is it goes with the ask why not really focus on getting the better data, because that's what she's struggling with, as I understand, because we just don't have the data in HMS that we need to have in there. So she's struggling with it, and she's asking us to give her more what we know, and we just don't know. So my recommendation is let's focus really on that data and then really come up with I'm not saying, I mean, it's really great to have her and do this, but let's make sure we're not creating a work around not having to have the data to come up with some estimates based on a magic hat when we're already that close to have actually the data to do that whole work. We're so close, I feel. So I just caution off the timing. Let's wait 2 months or so. See what
Yeah, just eventually it would be good for the exec to look it over and then decide what to do with what they see there. Yep. I get the timing thing.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Anything else today? All right. Well, it looks like our lovely time has come to an end again. All right. So I guess we're done. Anybody else? Anything? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Susie, I'm so glad Rafe is doing okay. So
Thank you.
scary, and I'm so sorry. That's got to be one of the hardest things a mother can endure. So
It's been rough. It's been roughest on him, but it's tough not being able to be there.
Yeah.
And he's a trooper. I think he's going to be discharged later today. So
good. Okay.
thank you.
Well, keep us up to date and let us know if there's anything you need. All right. All right then. Motion to adjourn.
I make
So
a motion.
moved.
It was so moved by someone, and how about a second from another?
Yes.
Okay. So motion by April, second by Elena. All in favor, say aye and log off. Aye.
I